Welcome to Odds.com's continuing coverage of MLB postseason baseball. And Nolly knows the Dodgers are back in action. I'm sure that was a huge sigh of relief, breaking the MLB record for first inning runs in a postseason game. The first team to ever hit 3 home runs in the first inning of a postseason game. You're wearing the jersey. You're back in action. Nolly knows. How you feeling after game 3?
Oh, feeling a lot better. Feeling a lot better today. I was more willing to do the video. I was wanting to hide yesterday, but I'm back today. I'm excited. The one concern was that maybe they got a little too excited with all those runs and made it like a pointless game towards the end. But still, a lot to be excited for. The bats are awake, and it's a series. It's definitely a series, and I'm excited.
Well, we expect Kershaw to be on the mound. The market has set up for Kershaw on the mound. I've already made a move on the over, and I wasn't able to make it an action bet. Bet365 forced us to have listed pitchers will start. So let's talk about this right now, because Kershaw isn't the big question mark. The big question mark is 22-year-old Bryce Wilson. Man, let's break him down. 4th-round pick in the 2016 draft out of Orange High School in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Made his MLB debut as a 20-year-old in 2018. In 2018, he went from High A in Florida to Double A Mississippi to Triple A Gwinnett, and then made his MLB debut. Very impressive 2018. He has started 7 of his 15 career regular season appearances, including 2 starts to close out this season. His longest career start lasted 6 innings when he allowed 2 runs against the Phillies in July of 2019. So this is not just a bullpen day for sure. If Bryce Wilson can get some outs, I'm sure they'll let him hang in there. He had a 4.02 ERA, 1.72 whip in 15 2/3, 15 Ks, 9 walks. That was this year. A 5.91 ERA in parts of 3 seasons with Atlanta. So he gets 8.62 Ks per 9 this year, but walks 5.17 per 9. Nolly, to put that a different way, Kershaw, 9.57, 1.23. Kershaw in the playoffs this year is striking out 12.21 per 9 and walking 0.64 batters per 9. His BABIP, this is Bryce Wilson, this year 348, high. His FIP, bad at 4.85. Kershaw's BABIP in the regular season was 232. His FIP was 3.31. Bryce Wilson has a fastball, slider, curve, and changeup. His fastball averages 94.8 miles per hour. And the big question is this too much too soon for Bryce Wilson?
I mean, in my opinion, I believe so. I mean, they asked the guy whether or not he thought he'd be in this position, and there's no way. He says, it's a dream of his, and no matter what, this is where he wants to be, but he never in a million years imagined he'd be there even just a year ago. The kid's just 22 years old. Mind you, he did have a good minor league career, 74 starts, 76 games started, 2.94 ERA, 1.12 whip in the minor leagues. But here in the major leagues, just hasn't been the same guy. And the biggest thing, what I saw, and with the strategy that the Dodgers were deploying here today with the left-handed batters, and that's a cause for concern for Wilson. Versus left-handed hitters, he's given up 343 batting average, 452 slugging, 600 on base percentage, and 85 at bats. So a decent sample size for you to look on, and so that's my one concern. And you said it, Brian Snitker. He said it in the interviews. He doesn't want to classify this as a bullpen game. He's hoping that Wilson can go deep enough to maybe hold on to some of those relievers. They had a couple guys go deep today, Ynoa being one of the main guys. But keep in mind, they were looking at Ynoa as possible Game 5 starter as well. So mind you that he does help them for today. He hurts them for tomorrow. So that's still a big hurt for their bullpen a bit. That is painful for their bullpen. And Kershaw, I mean, as much as I want to say that he's not a question mark at this point, he somewhat is. You know, the back issues that he dealt with are a bit of a concern, albeit they talked about his bullpen. Um, Dave Roberts said he was letting it go. It was coming out great. You know, he's saying all the right things and that the guy's going to be good. But one thing that I noticed in the San Diego game, and his velocity was down. His velocity was down about 2.5 miles an hour. The home run off Hosmer hit off of him, 89.6 mile an hour. That's simply not going to get it done here at this level if he wants to be successful, especially against a good fastball hitting team. I mean, I hate to say I agree with an over, but I'm leaning that way myself. You know, as much as I want to sit here and trust Kershaw in this spot, those are red flags. That velocity goes back down. That's something that I'm afraid of. And the fact that these guys are playing every day, the offenses were getting some basically batting practice yesterday or today. I mean, they were getting batting practice, and yeah, I think I'm gonna have to agree with your lean there.
Well, it's more than a lean. I have bet the over 9 at -120. At this point, we are shooting this at 1:18 a.m. Eastern time. The market came out, Nolly, about an hour and a half ago. It looked like there were some 9.5s on the board. I don't expect this to sit at 9. I think that's a very important point you brought up about Kershaw's velocity. We talked about Kershaw earlier in the year throwing 94. His average fastball this year was 91.7. So as the year went on, his velocity dipped, and you mentioned it there. I think that he is not a lights out spot right now. He's clearly out of his rhythm. He's worrying about his back. This is not the same type of situation that I said about Greinke. I really believe that Greinke was ready to go today. And I think that Kershaw just wants to be out there so badly for his team that he might put himself in a bad spot here. Kershaw, 2.16 ERA, 0.84 WHIP during the regular season. He was great. 62 Ks, 8 walks, and 58 in a third. 1.93, 0.71 WHIP. 19 Ks and 14 postseason innings this year. And we've talked about the curse of the playoffs for Kershaw. And last night's video with you, I talked about how the Braves were smashing lefties. And they certainly came down back to earth against Urias. 300 average now, 897 OPS. I moved on the over 9 at -120. That was the only spot really available that I wanted to abuse at my book. The first 5s aren't out, but the first 5 is at 5. I would rather have the 9 because it wouldn't surprise me if Kershaw has a nice start here. Would you find the full game at 9 more appealing than the first 5 at 5?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you talk about these postseason games coming down to the wire, these guys start going at it late, and especially because we're going to be picking on the bullpen situation. This is a tough scenario for these guys. I mean, mind you, even if they didn't pitch yesterday, they've been pitching quite a bit more often than not, and playing all these games back to back. I give the advantage to the hitters, and I'm really not. I don't know if I can trust Kershaw, and like you said, the stamina, right? So we're looking at his velocity throughout the season, but it also goes from the game. So he might be pitching a little bit harder early in the early innings, but later innings he might dip in velocity and giving up some hits they maybe shouldn't, especially when we're talking about his 5th and 7th inning ERA, when they tend to explode. You're talking almost 4 in the 5th, and you're talking almost 6 in the 7th. So yeah, I would say full game more so, because when you see that lineup turn around, you look every single game so far, the Atlanta Braves have put up runs in the 9th inning. And that's something that I never take my eye off of. That's something that they've done going back the last 3-4 years. They hit to the very last out. So, yeah, definitely full game over first 5.
I do not know if Bryce Wilson is going to be able to sleep tonight. One of the things that I like to back a young kid, it's one of the situations I like to back a young kid, is when, let's say, Max Fried is supposed to start, and Bryce comes to the park and he knows that Fried's starting. I mean, Bryce hasn't thrown an inning in the playoffs so far. So he's expecting Max Fried to start. And then he finds out 2 hours before first pitch that Fried got hurt and Bryce Wilson has to come in. That's a situation where I like it. I like it. I think that, he hasn't been sitting there stewing on the fact that this is the biggest start of his entire life by far. And that's what Bryce Wilson is doing right now. So I also want to make a move on the Dodgers team total. So that's not available right now, but that's going to be another move that I make. At this point, the Dodgers are between minus 215 and minus 230 favorites. The run line, if you wanted it, would be a minus 140. I almost feel like there's too much juice associated with those two spots and that I'd prefer just the team total and the full game over. I think that will be my plan for tomorrow, to leave these big numbers, the big juiced numbers on the Dodgers alone. Does the Dodgers at minus 1.5 appeal to you?
No, I mean, I'm not the type of guy that's really going to lay numbers. That's not something that I like to do. But here in this situation, I do like where the Dodgers stand, but I like your angle on the team total. And if you can get some first 5 team totals, I like that even more. And you made a great point about it being a mental game, 90% physical, 50% mental, just like Yogi Berra says, So it is a mental game, and it can be tough on youngsters. But one thing I will say with some of these youngsters, that sometimes they don't really seem to realize the magnitude for some reason. And when they're young, they perform better than when they're older. So that's one concern here, but I'm not concerned about that here. I really think they're just over their heads with this guy. They're doing what they have to do. They're saying the right things because they need to, but they don't really want to be going with this guy. You're talking a guy that wasn't on the wild card team. He's coming in here for the divisional series, championship series, I believe. I mean, and there's just not a lot of faith that I see that they had in him. They're going to say they do, but they really don't. And I'm seeing runs from the Dodgers. I might go with the first 5 team total over for the Dodgers.
Another interesting point, Nolly, in this game is last 2 games, the roof has been open, something that we didn't see at Globe Life during the regular season. And I do not expect it to be open tonight. I mean, or, Thursday night. 70 Fahrenheit at first pitch. So that's about 15 degrees colder than it was in game 3. There's also 16 mile per hour wind sideways and in. So that's an enormous part of whether or not this total is going to go up. I think that if this roof stays open at 70 Fahrenheit with the wind, I don't think it goes up. And I'll be a little more concerned. I know that the roof closed, the offense has been down, but what do you think about this important factor in a total? 70 Fahrenheit, overcast, 60 miles per hour, sideways in. What are your expectations on the roof, and how do you think it affects this bet?
Well, I mean, under those conditions, if you're taking the over, we want that thing to be closed. Those are conditions that are more indicative towards the under. Typically, things that I like to look for when going across around that temperature. And then I understand this ballpark has taken away some runs, but it is pretty big on the outsides, on the corners. And mind you, a lot of those runs did come because of the lack of runs thereof because of the Texas Rangers. That was a bad offensive team. Let's keep that in mind. These are 2 of the best offenses in all of baseball. So I will keep that in mind. But at the same time, I have seen home runs just disappear into outs there. A couple, even one today at least, even with the wind blowing out today. So if you're leaning for the over, you got to want the roof closed today, which is complete contrast of what you typically want. But I would agree there, and I would expect it to be closed.
Wow, here we go. Game 4 NLCS. You got to like the situation you're in, Nolly, with Bryce Wilson on the mound. Are you can you be confident down 2-1 in this series? Have the tides turned that much?
I mean, it's crazy to say that, right? You're down 2-1, but it does feel like that. And then I hear when I'm reading some of these reports, even when they talk about it yesterday, when you're listening to Dave Roberts speak, and it seems like he knows something that nobody else does because he's saying, I like where we stand. And he says it again today. I like where we stand with Kershaw. I'm really confident where we at. We do what we need to do. We'll come out victorious. Those are his words, and we're starting to feel the tide turn a bit because here if Kershaw can give us a good solid outing, game 5, we got Dustin May on regular rest, and then we send everybody on regular day rest. And that's an advantage because after this game, who are you going to go with? Are you going to go with Freed on 3 days rest, something he's never done? So he's putting them on a spot. So ultimately, this is crazy to say it, but probably one of the biggest starts for Kershaw's career here. You know, this has a lot to do with who he is and his legacy and how far the Dodgers go. So arguably one of his biggest starts.
Yeah, and I don't have a ton of confidence in him just because of the back issues. In fact, if they're hanging a 3.5 team total for the Braves, I find that appealing. I wonder what the juice is going to be. I mean, are we expecting the team total for this game to be Dodgers at 5.5 and the Braves at 3.5?
I mean, based on what you see for the odds, that would have to be what you see. You know, you got Dodgers at -1.5, at -145, -150. So based on the odds, I guess that's what you would have to see. And I agree, there's value with that Braves team total over. I'm gonna have to agree with you. This is gonna be a tough game. I would not expect a blowout and then just the Braves to roll over in this game. This is gonna be a battle. This is more indicative of what the series should be like. So yeah, I like the angle. I don't trust Kershaw 100% here, especially with the back issues.
I'm excited. Dodgers Braves game 4. I've already locked in the over 9 at -120, and my palms are leaking just talking about these team totals that I both think now that we've talked about that Braves, which we expect at 3.5, if it's not too juiced, there's every possibility that it won't be too juiced. I think that might be also on my card. Follow me on Twitter to find out if it is on my card. Also follow Nolly Knows here at Nolly562 on Twitter. He's an absolutely great follow. And subscribe here on Odds HQ. Thank you guys so much for watching, and follow us on Twitter as well. Odds110. Nolly Knows, my man, you're back in business. Looking good in that Dodgers jersey. Congratulations on your team's success. And I hope there's a lot of runs in game 4.